He thought destiny was for people who needed excuses for coincidence. She thought some things didn't need explanations at all. They were strangers, until a single moment rewrote everything they believed about love. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more romantic stories. Elias Mercer didn't believe in destiny. He believed in data, in forecasts, in the kind of clean lines that turned chaos into quarterly profits. His penthouse overlooked the city like a chessboard he'd already solved: glass, steel, certainty. Then the elevator stalled. It was supposed to be a quick ride down to another meeting he didn't want to attend. Instead, the lights hummed into stillness, and the air shifted into a quiet pause he wasn't used to. Elias checked his watch, irritated, until the elevator doors slid open again, revealing not the lobby, but a woman stepping in with a paper bag of pastries and a laugh that sounded like sunshine finding its way into a room. "Hi," she said, a little breathless. "Is this going down, or have I made friends with a very expensive closet?" He almost smiled. "Almost." "Yes," he said, then realized he'd answered nothing. "Down." She pressed the button and leaned back against the mirrored wall, peeking into the bag. "Good. I promised my sister I wouldn't be late. These croissants are still warm, which is basically a trust exercise." Elias watched the elevator resume its gentle descent. The city returned to moving around them. He nodded, the polite minimum. But something tugged at him anyway, an unfamiliar curiosity, like the beginning of a song he didn't recognize but somehow wanted to hear the rest of. "I'm Lila," she offered, holding out her hand as if they were in a living room instead of a private elevator. He hesitated. People usually knew his name before he introduced himself. The pause felt strange. Human. "Elias," he said, taking her hand. "Warm. Easy. Unexpected." They let go too quickly. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was gentle. Lila hummed, a soft tune without words, and the sound filled the space between floors. Elias found himself counting the seconds, then forgetting to. He asked her where she was headed. "Nowhere fancy," she said. "Just home. I bake when I'm nervous. Or happy. Or bored. So, often." He surprised himself by laughing. It came out low, rusty, like a door opening after a long winter. The elevator chimed. The doors slid open. The lobby breathed in around them, light, marble, motion. "Well," she said, lifting the bag. This was a nice almost meeting. Almost meeting. The phrase stuck to him. "Coffee?" he asked, the word escaping before he'd planned it. His calendar screamed in protest inside his head. Lila tilted her head, considering him with eyes that saw more than the tailored suit and the posture of control. "Maybe another time. Today is for croissants and keeping promises." Fair. No one ever said no to him. The thought felt refreshing. She stepped out, then paused, turned back. "Elias who?" "Mercer," he said. Her eyes widened a fraction, then softened into amusement. "Of course you are." She didn't ask for a number. She didn't linger. She simply walked into the flow of the lobby, sunlight catching in her hair as if the day itself had decided to follow her. The doors closed. Elias stood alone, the reflection of a man in a suit staring back at him, a faint smile he didn't remember choosing. For the first time in years, he didn't go to his meeting. He went upstairs instead, opened the windows to let the city's breeze rearrange his carefully curated air, and wondered, quietly, stubbornly, whether destiny might be less about believing, and more about recognizing someone when the universe decides to say hello. Outside, somewhere in the city, Lila set the warm paper bag on a small kitchen table and felt the curious echo of a moment she couldn't explain. And just as she reached for her phone, her screen lit up with a name she didn't recognize, Elias Mercer. Lila stared at the glowing screen as if it had just blinked at her. Elias Mercer. She hadn't given him her number. Which, under normal circumstances, would have been alarming. Under romance novel circumstances, it was intriguing in a way that made her narrow her eyes and smile at the same time. She didn't pick up. Instead, she set the phone face down on the table, opened the paper bag, and tore a croissant in half. Steam drifted up, buttery and comforting. The city murmured beyond her open window. Her sister called from the other room, asking if the pastries had survived the journey. They did, Lila answered, but her attention drifted back to the quiet weight of the phone. It buzzed again. A message this time. Elias, I promise I'm not a magician. Concierge mixed up a number. If this is Lila from the elevator, I owe you coffee for making my morning less beige. Beige. She laughed into the croissant, flakes falling onto the table like confetti. She flipped the phone over and typed. Lila, beige is a serious condition. But coffee sounds like an unnecessary medical procedure. The reply came quickly, as if he'd been waiting. Elias, unnecessary procedures are my specialty. Tomorrow morning? No pressure. I'll be at the cafe across from my building at 8. She pictured him there, tailored suit, city light eyes, pretending he wasn't the kind of man who usually had people waiting on him instead of the other way around. The thought warmed her chest in a soft, inconvenient way. Lila, maybe. I might be busy saving beige souls elsewhere. She set the phone down again, this time with a little more care. The cafe across from Elias's building had a chalkboard menu that changed with the mood of the barista. Elias had walked past it 100 times without noticing. This morning, he arrived early. He didn't check his phone. He didn't check the time. He simply watched the door, pretending the light through the window was more interesting than the possibility that she wouldn't come. At 8:07, the bell chimed. Lila stepped in, scarf loose around her neck, sunlight in her hair like yesterday had followed her indoors. She paused when she saw him, a smile tugging at her mouth that didn't look practiced. Unnecessary medical procedure, she said, sliding into the chair across from him. I'm late. I was rescuing a very stubborn plant. I admire your priorities, Elias said, and meant it. They ordered. They talked about nothing important, her baking experiments, his habit of forgetting to eat lunch when he was deep in work. The minutes unspooled without urgency. The city pressed its noise to the windows, but inside the cafe, time felt gentler. This is where you conquer the world from, she asked, nodding toward the glass towers outside. Sometimes, he said. Mostly I just try not to let it conquer me. She studied him then, really looked, as if she could see the spaces he'd carefully organized his life around. You don't seem beige, she said softly. Just, curated. The word landed, accurate and kind. Something in Elias loosened. When they stood to leave, the air between them felt like the beginning of a story neither of them had outlined. Outside, the morning opened up in clean blue lines, full of ordinary miracles, passing dogs, clattering cups, sunlight doing its best work. I should go, Lila said, taking a step back. My sister will start a search party if I'm late again. Will I see you again? Elias asked, direct in a way that surprised even him. She considered him, then reached into her bag and pressed something into his hand. A folded recipe card. Maybe, she said. If you can bake these without burning them. He unfolded it. Lemon vanilla shortbread, handwritten in looping ink. At the bottom, don't rush the butter. Some things need time. When he looked up, she was already moving into the crowd, turning once to lift a hand in a small, bright goodbye. Elias tucked the recipe into his jacket pocket like a promise. And across the street, Lila's phone buzzed again, not with a message, but with an unfamiliar reminder she didn't remember setting. Tonight, 9 p.m., don't forget him. She slowed, heart thumping with a strange, sweet uncertainty. because she was certain she hadn't told her phone to remember him at all. Okaway, finale time, soft hearts, no danger, all the cozy Destiny vibes coming right up Sparkles. Lila stood in the middle of the sidewalk, city sounds blurring into a distant hush as she stared at the reminder on her phone. Tonight, 9 p.m., don't forget him. She laughed under her breath. I wasn't planning to, she murmured, slipping the phone back into her pocket. The reminder felt unnecessary, because somehow, he was already there, tucked into the quiet spaces of her thoughts, like a song she couldn't stop humming. That evening, the city wore a gentler glow. Windows lit up one by one. The sky faded into a soft indigo, the kind that made everything feel possible. At 9 p.m. exactly, Elias stood in his kitchen, sleeves rolled up, flour on the counter, lemon zest on his fingertips. He stared at the oven like it might negotiate with him. The first batch of shortbread was heroic in spirit. The second was edible. The third smelled like hope. He plated the best-looking ones, slid them into a simple box, and hesitated at his door. For a man who signed billion-dollar deals without blinking, knocking on a woman's door with homemade cookies felt wildly vulnerable. He knocked anyway. Lila opened the door in socked feet, hair still damp from a shower, the scent of vanilla and clean soap drifting into the hallway. Her surprise melted into a smile that reached somewhere deep in his chest. "You baked," she said, like she was a little proud of him. "I followed instructions," he corrected. "Mostly." She took the box, peeked inside, and her eyes softened. "Come in, Mercer." Inside her apartment, warmth lived in every corner, soft lamps, plants that leaned toward the windows, a half-finished painting on an easel like a thought waiting to be completed. Elias felt, absurdly, like he'd walked into color after living too long in grayscale. They tasted the cookies together, laughing at the uneven shapes. He told her about his day without mentioning numbers or meetings. She told him about her sister's dramatic reaction to burnt croissants. The conversation didn't try to impress, it simply unfolded. At one point, the room grew quiet, not empty, just full. "Can I ask you something?" Lila said. "Anything. Do you still not believe in destiny?" Elias considered the way the evening had assembled itself, a stalled elevator, a shared laugh, a recipe card, an unnecessary reminder that felt like a nudge from the universe. He looked at her, really looked, at the ease in her smile, the way the world seemed softer around her. "I believe in paying attention," he said. "And in choosing to show up." She smiled, slow and bright. "That sounds like destiny with better manners." He reached for her hand, tentative, giving her the space to decide. She closed the distance instead, their fingers fitting as if they'd learned the shape of each other in some quieter lifetime. The city hummed outside her window, steady and alive. For a moment, everything felt settled. Then Lila's phone lit up on the table between them. Not a reminder this time. A calendar invitation, sent just now, from an unknown contact. 1 year from tonight, remember how this began. They both stared at the screen. Lila laughed first, soft and a little breathless. "Okay, that's new." Elias felt the familiar urge to explain, to control the narrative, then let it go. He squeezed her hand instead. "Maybe," he said, smiling, "we'll find out." Outside, the city kept shining. Inside, two people leaned closer, choosing each other without knowing the ending yet, only that whatever waited a year from now was already gently calling their names.